Okay, so here we have the guide to Don't Lose Your Way, registering footpaths thing going on. Essentially, we have until 1st of January 2026 to extract any evidence of footpaths, rights of way, bridleways from old evidence sources before 2026. Otherwise, all those evidence sources lose their legal weight. So, if they indicate that there's a nice footpath present, it won't matter after 2026. Well, frankly, after 2025, because the deadline is the 1st of January 26. So let's try and register some footpaths before we lose them for future generations. Of course, this is one of those big legal moments that will resonate in time. Okay, so number one, you need some recruits. You need some help for your local area. Ask the British Horse Society or the Ramblers, or make a meetup group, and you'll get a few people coming forward, and they can all help out when in the tasks ahead. Number two, get in touch with your local council officers. They're these footpath officers. They manage the footpath network. Find out how they did things from the early days. Okay, so 1950 was when they started working on this so-called definitive map, and it's useful to understand the efforts that went into that. Sometimes they're very diligent, sometimes they weren't diligent. Good to know. It gives you an idea of what you're up against. So, for example, in some rural areas, all the parish councillors who had to submit these rights of way were landowners, and so they decided not to submit rights of way because they didn't want footpaths going through their area. It can be useful to know just to get context, understand the situation. On the other hand, sometimes certain patches, certain areas were very well managed, and you might find, like I know, some parts of like North Bedfordshire is incredibly well populated for footpaths because of the good work done in early days. You get that knowledge, and it might drive your research in different directions. Maybe you'll look to a neighbouring county or something. It might just change your approach. It's useful to know. Ask the officers themselves on how to do the job, how to find lost paths, what forms of evidence were most useful in that area, commercial maps, or which ones were most useful. Ask them also if any documentation is still on their hands and not in the archives, and see if the footpath officers might be willing to share online digital documents. That's really useful, makes life easier rather than coming in to the paper archives all the time. Okay, number three, if those footpath officers aren't so helpful, they might not be. They really might not be. Just because the reason they might not be is because it's work for them. Some are more diligent than others, and ultimately, you're going to be creating a lot of work for them, which is the nature of the thing. We have to recognise that this job, done properly, may take several decades of work to process. So the applications we put in today won't be handled overnight. They'll be carefully worked through according to the appropriate legal processes. That's in the manner of things. For example, back in North Bedfordshire, there's a chap in the 50s who lodged dozens of footpath applications, and they weren't processed until the 1980s when he was dead. But his legacy has been magnificent footpath network in that area, and so such is life. This is a big task and a long task. All right, footpath. If they're not so helpful, just start anywhere. But where? Well, there are four main evidence sources which are the best quality in law, the best legal quality, and one of these will be online, and it will give you a good place to start. Okay, so old commercial maps, check out National Library of Scotland website, and British Library has some as well. Tithe maps. Sometimes they're online, if not, by a subscription to the Genealogist for online access. Very good evidence source. Enclosure awards. Often they're not online, but you might be able to persuade these organisations to upload them. That'll be good. Otherwise, you have to go to the archives and photograph them yourself. Very good evidence. Inland revenue valuation records. Very good evidence. Again, it may need these organisations help to get them online, or you have to go in yourself. Okay, so you've got these 4 evidence sources. Pick one that's easiest for you to access, and then go over it. And what are you going to do? You're going to compare the rights of way on your evidence source to the rights of way on your current local definitive map, which is usually online, but you can also probably you can get away with using the Bing Maps Ordnance Survey maps as they stand. Bing Maps lists the Ordnance Survey maps online. It's very useful. So you want to just compare, then compile a list of paths which appear on the historic source, but not on the current mapping. And then you've got your list. Got a nice big list, and now you're going to run some safety checks. Check the register of DMMO applications held by usually the local council, to see if, and it'll be online, to see if the path has already been reviewed and rejected. Check the adopted highways register. Google it should be online, to see if a path is now where a public road is already, so you can ignore it. Check the council file on the parish in question for any useful evidence. Good to know. And then check the BHS, British Horse Society Dobbin database, to see if the British Horse Society are already reviewing the route. And finally, you want to check the first 1950 definitive map in the local archives against the latest definitive map. If the path was on the first one but has since disappeared, ensure it was legitimately stopped up. In rare cases, they can disappear with no clear reason, and they're very easily brought back. Generally speaking, if they disappeared on the last definitive map, there is a legitimate reason for them to having disappeared for some reason. There generally is, but there sometimes isn't. So if you're finding this part, number 5, to be too difficult, you could put it aside and just put a star against that footpath and ignore it, because it's probably been legitimately stopped up. If you already have a good stock of footpaths, maybe you could do that, and then just return to these ones afterwards. So number 5, if it's all clear, gather further evidence. You need as much evidence as you can get, ideally. So review the other 4 major evidence sources if you can easily access them. And the question of how much evidence you need is an interesting one, and I'm going to cover that in a second. And you've got these quarter sessions. They're pretty good records. You want to check the quarter sessions. They contain legal orders for diverting and extinguishing paths, so it's legal evidence of a path. Also, good evidence found in railway plans of built and unbuilt lines. So you have to look for any highway crossings which appear on those documents, but do not appear on the definitive map of today. So that's a good place to look for what paths that have slipped off the record. And then finally, compile the application. Now, how much evidence do you need? Well, the real conversation among the people who know what they're doing in this area seems that if a path appears in even one of the major sources, crack on and compile an application. But it's just ideal to include as many sources as practical. So if it's in one of the major sources and it passes the safety checks, at this stage you'd be minded to submit an application. But that said, you really should just try and build up your sources as much as possible, because that will increase the chance of your application going through. And then make use of the proformas of the definitive map modification order application responses in Bucks and Wadey's textbook just Google Bucks and Wadey. So it's a great book all about this topic. It's the one you need. Okay, that's all. Good luck. Comments below if you want, and I hope things go well. Bye bye.